Good morning, everybody. I'd like to keep the interaction this morning as informal as possible. As you know that we have been going around Fiji holding consultations in various towns and cities. Last year, one of the things we did was we decided to reach out and have consultations with students from high schools. The reason why we're doing that is because we obviously need to hear from you. You are part of 69.4% of the population. Today in Fiji, 69.4% of the population is below the age of 40. So you constitute the bulk of the population. It's very important, as you know, that in Fiji for years, young people have been very much neglected. In fact, young people, when they reach the age of 18, in fact, at the age of 16, girls could be married off from the age of 16 to 21 with parents' consent. And young men from the age of 18 to 21 could be married off with parents' consent. So after 21, you didn't need consent. We of course changed the law now. Nobody in Fiji can get married at the age of 16 or 17. You can only get married at the age of 18. That's when you become adults under the UN definition. So after the age of 18, you can go off and get married without anybody's consent, as long as the other partner is consenting to get married to you. You don't need your parents' consent. So we've changed a number of things. But also, as you know, before, if you reached the age of 18, you could not even vote. You had to reach the age of 21. And you could actually, at the age of 18, if you left school or university, you could join the military, you could join the police, you could join the correction services, you paid taxes if you worked. But you did not have the right to vote, which we obviously thought was not very fair. If you had to go to prison, you would go to the adult prison. You would not go to the children's prison or juvenile correction services. This is why the law has changed. This is why in the Constitution now, anybody who is over the age of 18 has the right to vote, and you have your full rights and privileges as an adult in the Fijian society. So we are reaching out to you. We want to hear from you what your views are in respect of the budget. What we normally do is we try and take this occasion to try and help you explain what is the process regarding the budget. You may have seen us on television. We stand up one night or during the day and we give the speech and we say, this is the budget for next year. What does it actually mean? What are the things we take into consideration? How does our economy look like? We need you to understand that. And then what we'll do, I'll take you through a short presentation and hopefully all of you can see the screen. And then we can open up the floor. So please ask any questions, if you have any suggestions, if you have any contributions. Don't think any question is too hard or too silly to ask. This is your opportunity to do so. Last year in the budget consultations, when we first started with the school students, we actually had only 3 consultations. We had one in Suva, at Suva Grammar School, for all the students in the Central Division. We had one in Lambasa for all the students in the Northern Division, and one at Natambua High School for all the students in the Western Division. We realized, and of course a lot of people said that they were also very interested, but they weren't able to come, because, you know, for example, the people in Rakiraki, for them to come all the way to Natambua is quite a long way. So this year we've decided to actually have the consultations in all the major towns and cities in Fiji. So everybody living around it. So we're here, you're the first school, privileged here in Navua, all the people, all of you in Namosisero area, you're privileged. You're the first school we're having consultations with. So we're here this morning. In the afternoon at 2 o'clock, we're at Suva Grammar. Tomorrow, because we've got cabinet in the morning, then in the afternoon I'm at Vunimono High School in Nosori. Then on Wednesday at Singatoka Methodist, all the people in the Navos area. In the afternoon at Swami Vivekananda College for all the people in the Nandi area. Then on Thursday we are at Natambua High School for all the people in the Latoka area. And in the afternoon at Bai at Xavier College for all the people in the Bai area. And then we continue again in the next few weeks in all the other areas throughout Fiji, including Savusavu and Lambasa. So that essentially is what the program would be like. So please feel free. We've got mics going around, make any suggestions. Last year, one of the issues that came out very strongly from the students is, you know, we have about 600 scholarships that we give in selected areas of studies. So there's a strong submission. And if you see the scholarships, most of the scholarships that we are giving or started giving out are for people who are in the science areas. for doctors, nurses, engineers, teachers, marine scientists, forest conservators, town planners, land surveyors, because there's a huge shortage of skill sets. We don't give any scholarships for people to become lawyers. We've got too many lawyers. But all those things that I just highlighted, there's a shortage of those people in those areas. And also in Fiji, generally we find a lot of parents push their children to, or their school children to become, doing the same thing like accounting and economics and becoming a lawyer. It seemed to be a big career move. But in fact, you can have a very good career as a marine scientist, as a forest conservator, as an engineer, as a nurse, as a doctor. All those areas are very, very important too. Town planners, surveyors, and there's a whole list of other things. So there's strong submissions. So last year, after the submissions, we increased the scholarships from 600 to 630. And in fact, we gave a bit more scholarships for people wanting to study economics and accounting because they felt that they needed more. So we have a lot of positive things that come out of it too. So if we can start off with the first slide. Now, normally, we talk about economic growth. So for only the second time in Fiji's history have we had the economy growing 7 years in a row. You can see from 2009, it's been growing all the way through. We have a dip here because of Cyclone Winston. Many of you know that, for example, Navua was also hit in terms of flooding, but many of the other parts of Fiji, the cyclone caused a devastating loss. We are spending $135 million in this year's budget just to fix up schools. Enormous damage, in particular in the western side, in Vanua and Vanua Levu, in Taveuni and the southern parts of Vanua Levu. So growth normally slows down after cyclone, but nonetheless the economy has been growing, which is good for us, which is good for you, which is good for the economy, it's good for jobs, it creates more jobs also. The next slide, please. Now, what are the things that makes the economy grow in Fiji at the moment? Now, you have what we call the primary sector. So, agriculture contributes about 0.31%. Fish is very low, 0.02%. Forestry, or fisheries I should say, forestry is 0.01% only, very low. In the industry sector, manufacturing is quite high, you can see. We're making a lot of things in Fiji now. Some chairs are made in Fiji, tubes are made in Fiji, mops are made in Fiji, beds are made in Fiji. Lots of things we are making in Fiji now. So that's contributing a lot. It's creating a lot of jobs. We make drugs in Fiji, as in not drugs, the drugs you guys take. I mean, not you guys take. You're not supposed to take. But drugs is in medicine. It's also made in Fiji. It's a pharmaceutical company. We make garments. All of this is in the manufacturing sector. But also over here is sugar too, sugar production. Construction industry, 0.33. Mining, electricity and water. Financial services is 0.39. Transport, wholesale, retail. These are the areas in the economy that contributes to economic growth. Our job as a government and our job as all of us as Fijians, as citizens, is to what we call is broaden the economic base. We should not be reliant on only one or two things to contribute to make the economy grow. It's very important. So for example, if the Fijian economy was dependent only on sugar, or only dependent on, say, fishing, if something that year happened, we had a cyclone and all the sugarcane crops got damaged, then obviously the economy would be really badly affected. But if you have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 things that contributes to the economy, then if one sector gets damaged, the others will still carry you along. So that's how we look at it. That's what we call broad-based economic growth. Broad-based economic growth. Now, what are the things we look at? So between January and September last year, the value of building permits went up. Why do we look at that? When the value of building permits, when they want to build a building, if your school wants to put up a building, they go to the rural local authority or the municipal council and say, we want to put up a building, and it will be a $250,000 building, 5 classrooms. So from that we know work is happening, construction is happening. Construction is very important. Because, so for example, even to build this structure here, somebody has to dig the hole, somebody has to lay the cement, somebody has to put the roof. The electrician will have to come and put the wiring for the electricity. All of this creates jobs. When you create jobs, construction creates a lot of jobs. When people have jobs, they have money in their pocket. When they have money in their pocket, they go and spend the money. They go and buy their beer, they go and buy their clothes, they go and buy a second-hand car, they may buy a watch, they may buy a pen, they may buy twisties, whatever it is. All of this contributes. When you buy things, you pay VAT. When we get the VAT, we get more money, we can give more money to your school, we can build better bridges, roads, jetties, whatever the case may be. That's how the economy works. So the value of work in place, in other words, the construction work taking place went up by 10.5%. Domestic cement sales went up by 11.1%. Remember, this is straight after the cyclone. The domestic cement sales actually at the moment will probably be higher. You don't buy cement and keep it underneath your house. You buy cement to build. So when cement sales go up, you know there's more construction taking place. Imports of investment goods. This is goods or machinery, etc., that we buy from overseas. Because if we see that people are buying more machinery from overseas, for example, that means they must be expanding their factory. They must be setting up a new factory. When they're doing that, that means we're creating jobs also. These are the key indicators that we look at. Government capital expenditure is called CapEx. Government capital expenditure is gone up by 7.8%. The government is spending a lot of money in respect of building things, whether it's a road, bridge, nursing station, school, it's gone up. That also creates a lot of investment in the economy. These are the things that have decreased: new investment lending for real estate and building. Of course, that goes down because we had Cyclone Winston in February last year. So obviously, that will get affected. But this year, it will be slightly different. Consumption indicators. So these are the everyday things we look at what's happening to them. You can see last year, new vehicle registration went up by 27.5%. I'm sure all of you have observed there are a lot more cars on the roads now in Fiji. A lot more cars. You go to Suvarnasori, even if the traffic coming out of Navua, you'll see there's a lot more cars, a lot more traffic jams. Even Navua town is getting traffic jams now. So that's new vehicle registration. Second-hand vehicle registration went up by 7.8%. So we've got more cars on the road. That means people have got more money in their pocket to go and buy. Or people are getting more access to loans to buy vehicles. New lending to wholesale retail trade. This is the trade area of wholesale and retail that went up by 13.2%. Imports of consumption goods. These are everyday goods that you buy. This watch that I'm wearing, these chairs, you see the steel, the shoes, some of the shoes that you are wearing, the beds that you are wearing, maybe the cloth, the uniform that you are wearing. It may be tailored in Fiji, but the actual material comes from overseas. The pen that you have in your hand, that is not necessarily made in Fiji, it comes from overseas. So when you have an imports of consumption goods going up, that means people are spending more money. People are feeling a lot more confident. PAYE collection. This is tax that people pay when they are working. So if that has gone up, that means people are either being paid more money, or at the same time we've got new jobs being created. New job advertisements went up by 15.1%. Normally the RBF, the Reserve Bank of Fiji, looks at how many new jobs have been advertised. They only look at Fiji Times. We've asked them to look at Fiji Sun also, because there are a lot of companies, including government, that only advertises in the Fiji Sun in respect of job advertisements. Personal remittances went up by 5%. What is this? This is people, Fijians living overseas, who are sending money back into Fiji. We have a lot of rugby players who work, who play in France and various other countries. They send money back home. A lot of our people who are in the British Army, when they're in the British Army, they send money back home. You may have friends, relatives living in Australia and New Zealand, they're sending money back home. So we have a lot of nurses who work overseas, they're sending money back home. So those amounts of money have gone up. When they send money back home, that means somebody's getting the money in Fiji. When they're getting the money in Fiji, that means they must be spending it. You can know the economy is growing, it's moving. The collection of VAT has increased also. Although VAT has decreased from 15% to 9%, in other words, bringing down the cost of goods for you as consumers, we are collecting more money because a lot more spending is going on. A lot more people are spending. New lending to private individuals had decreased. Next one. This just the vehicle registration. This goes to show, just by comparison, in 2005, there were 6,000 second-hand vehicles registered, 6,088. New vehicles are 3,363 in that 1 year. Look at it today. 10,152 vehicles, 7M, and 4,920 new vehicles. Huge growth, you can see the difference. That means a lot more vehicles in the road. In Fiji too also, we have this idea that if you want to show that you're doing well, you buy a car. No, it's a sign of social status. Oh, my son has just bought a car, must be doing well. These are the things that also contributes to these kind of consumption growth. Retail sales, we look at how sales are going up in the, you've got all the shops here. When their sales increase, you know that people are spending more money. You can see it was quite significantly high, 7.2, but of course the cyclone came, tends to drop. Whenever you have a cyclone, you have a climatic event, people tend to hold on to their money a bit more. They notice free spending. Of course, there's a lot more, less money too. I mean, after the cyclone, I will talk to you about inflation also later on. After the cyclone, for example, a bundle of beans cost $5. See, bananas, small bunch of bananas was $15, $20 in Suva. Till today, in certain parts of Fiji, yangona costs $110 a kilo, $120 a kilo. Recently, I had to buy some yangona. I had to go somewhere. I had to pay $110 a kilo. So that's a lot of money. But that leads to inflation. That is a direct effect of a cyclone. Beans, of course, thankfully don't cost $5 a bundle anymore. It's about $2, $1.50. A lot more people are growing it now. Less crops have been damaged. The crops that were damaged are now have recovered. This is inflation. So, this is measuring how the price of goods are coming up and down generally. You can see we were doing quite well from 2014. It was below 2% or just above 2%. It went down quite significantly. And this is where TC Winston came. You see how it went up. Then we of course had the event again. It went right up. But we're seeing it come down now. It will continue to come down because, as we said, that a lot more crops are being grown. Hopefully the price of yangona will come down. What is really interesting though is that although the price of yangona is $110 a kilo, people are still drinking it at the same rate. So you know that they're reprioritizing their money. These are the things we have to think about also. And what are the priorities we give to ourselves in our lives? Foreign reserve, this is very important. A lot of people don't know about this. Like I was mentioning, you see this screen projector, you see this screen. None of this is made in Fiji. This amplifier, this mic, nothing is made in Fiji. So we have to buy these things from overseas. When you buy these things, assuming this mic is made in Japan, when the person is importing this from Japan, they're dealing with a Japanese company. And they will say the price of this mic, they may sell it to them in Japanese yen. It may be 10,000 Japanese yen, for example. So we have to have the Japanese yen equivalent to buy that. So that's what you call foreign reserves. We may be buying certain things from Australia. You need the foreign reserves to buy it in Australian dollars. Certain people may sell things to us in US dollars. So you need to have that US dollars to be able to buy those goods. So the higher your foreign reserves, the better it is. When international companies, international banks and other countries look at Fiji, one of the first things they look at is how is your foreign reserves doing. If your foreign reserves are doing well, that means the country is in a stable position. Economically, it's in a stable position. You look at the level of foreign reserves we have in 2005. We had only $549 million worth of foreign reserves. Today, we have $1.9 billion of foreign reserves. If you see this dotted line here, this is what you call the international benchmark. Normally, you should have about 4 months worth of foreign reserves to be seen to be stable, to be seen to be strong. We have been below that for right up till about 2010. As you can see, we've been going up. So we now have about 5.2 months worth of foreign reserves, which is a very good position to be in. Given that, only about in 2005 we had only 2.3 months of foreign reserves with us. Next slide, please. Okay, this is looking at your fiscal deficit. Right from independence, all our governments have run what they call a fiscal deficit. In other words, we have been spending more than what we're actually collecting. All governments in Fiji except twice, where we have actually spent less than what we have had. So that's what you call a surplus budget. For those of you doing economics or generally studying about the country, if somebody has surplus budget, in other words, you have money left at the end of the year that has not come about because of borrowing. So for a country like Fiji, many countries in the world run what they call deficit budgets. So the trick is that this line here does not get longer. So the longer the line, the worse off we are. That means the deficit needs to be lower. This is the zero mark here, you can see. If you're above that, that means you're having a surplus. We had a small surplus here in 2008. All the other years we've had deficits. So the trick is to make this line shorter, which we have been trying to do. You can see that. That's been our focus. And of course, we had a cyclone here, and we had Winston here. So for example, if the cyclone Winston had not come last year, we would have been $208 million richer from this year's budget. We're spending about $132 million just to rebuild schools. We're actually going to we're spending a lot more money in agriculture. Health centers have been damaged. Government quarters have been damaged. We're giving money for building more roads. Bridges have been washed away. So we have to find more money, go and borrow more money to build these things. If, for example, your school's roof had gone, you won't be able to use that building. All those schools, even though they are privately run schools, we are giving money to rebuild those schools. So this is why our deficit has gone a bit higher. But the trick is to keep it as low as possible. So if we had not spent the $208 million, we'd be sitting somewhere up till about here. It would have been a good position. We need you to understand what actually happens when we have a climatic event like a cyclone. Total revenue. This is the amount of money that we make, we collect. So our policy has been, we try to run government as a business. We're trying to be mamangi. We try to make sure that we don't spend money where we don't need to spend money. We only spend where it's necessary. So this is also the collection. 2004, the government made $1.1 billion. Today, we are making $3.1 billion. The more money we make, the more money we can spend on you. The more money we make, the less money we have to borrow. Okay? So you can see government revenue has been increasing, which is a good thing. What are the things that helps us collect money? VAT, obviously. We collect money from VAT. Direct taxes, this is people paying their income tax. People paying corporate tax. These are what you call direct taxes. Customs. When certain this mic comes into Fiji, they pay a duty at the border. So this is what you call the customs revenue. Service turnover tax. If you go and eat at a very expensive restaurant in Port Denarau, you want to go and watch a movie at Village 6, you want to go and stay at a hotel, you will pay VAT, you will pay service turnover tax, you also pay environmental levy, which is actually not shown there, which is probably in others. Environmental levies in others. So these are the taxes that we pay, what we call the indirect taxes, but it's progressive taxation. If you go and eat at a small takeaway place, you only pay VAT. You don't pay STT, you don't pay environmental levy. That's how we collect money. If you go overseas, you pay departure tax. All those tourists who come to Fiji, when they come to Fiji and they leave, built into their tickets is a $200 departure tax. So that's how we collect money from that too. Of course, other fees and charges and stamp duty. Now please feel free to ask any questions whenever you want to. What we've done, we've put together the budgets for the money we're spending in infrastructure, which is roads, bridges, jetties and all of that, health, education, access to justice and social protection. We've lumped them together to show you how the difference has taken place. In 2004, the amount of money spent was 1.3 billion. Today we're spending about 3.6 billion for health and education, access to justice, legal aid. You've got a legal aid office here. And this is for single mothers, people who live in below a particular income level. If they need access to the court system, they've been charged, they get free legal representation. Today we have legal aid officers, about 14 or 15 legal aid officers throughout Fiji. It helps people who are at the lower end of the socio-economic scale. Social protection is welfare also. Welfare is to do with people who are disabled, people who may be single mothers, people who are living below poverty level. We give them an allowance, we give them a food voucher, we give them cash also. People who qualify, we give them that money. Also we started something, a lot of, for example, people who live in the rural areas, they don't have FNPF. They've been living in a village or they're living on a farm, they've never made FNPF contributions. So a lot of them, when they get old, they have no form of assistance. So we started a program that we said anybody over the age of 50, we start giving them a monthly allowance. So then we reduced the age from 70. Anybody over the age of 70, we'll give them pension. Then we reduced it to 68, then we reduced it to 66. So today, anybody who's 66 years and over gets $50 a month allowance. So just stay on that, please. Of course, in education, you don't pay school fees anymore. We pay it for you. We spend $21 million a year in paying bus companies so you can get subsidized bus fares. There's some students, for example, to get to the school, there's no buses there, but they need to take the punt. We pay for that too, for those people who cannot afford. We also pay for those people where there's no buses running, those mini buses, what they call the rural service license, we also pay for that too. Because for us, investing in the education sector is very, very important. We want all of you to have some form of qualification. You may not want to go to university, but you can go to technical college. Because when you have some form of qualification, you have the opportunity of getting better jobs. But we also don't want you to just become what we call job seekers. We want you to become job creators. Don't just simply think that just because you've left high school or university, you have to look for a job. It may well be that you may want to start up your own business. The business does not have to be a big business to start off with. Some of you may be very good with phones. You may decide to develop an app. Right? You may decide to develop an app. You may have a small idea. One of the things that we are working on at the moment, and hopefully we'll make some announcements regarding that, is to how to help people in the small to medium enterprises. Help people, give them some form of support so they can start their own businesses. Recently, the Honorable Prime Minister was here in Navua, where we gave out the $1,000 grants. These are the people, somebody may be in a village who may have a couple of pigs. They've got a couple of pigsties. They want to expand and have 3-4 more piglets. They may not have the money to get that $1,000, so we help them to buy the bricks or the fence or buy a piglet or whatever it is. So then they can move on to the next stage. This is the micro-enterprise grants, what we call the micro-enterprise grants. So these are some of the things that we are doing to help people get into that space. And this is why education is very important. Infrastructure development also is very, very important. We're spending a lot of money in that. Navua town, for example, we're doing the resealing of your roads. We'll be putting in more street lights, putting in more footpaths. I understand that you all want to be declared as a town. So those things, we obviously need to give you the infrastructure for that to happen. Those things all cost money. Okay? Next one, please. Expenditure mix. This is very, very important. You see, when you spend money, you need to ensure that you spend money wisely. And when you spend money also, you need to ensure that you are spending money for the future. The example that I use, if you, for example, want to have a big party tonight, you are not going to go to the bank and borrow money to have a party tonight. Because if you have that party tonight, when you wake up in the morning, you've had good time, but the loan is still there. But you got nothing to show for it. You got nothing to show for it. There's nothing there you can show for the loan. But if you go to the bank and borrow money to buy a car, after you've paid off the loan, the car is still there. If you borrow money to build a new house, or your parents borrow money to put an additional bedroom to the house, even though the loan is then finished, but the house is still there. The additional bedroom is still there. So for governments, we have to ensure that we spend more money for what you call capital expenditure. That is what you call capital expenditure. So you have, government also has to spend money for operating expenditure, which is, the everyday stuff. The civil servants, my salary, the vehicle that I came in, the fuel for that, the toilet paper the civil servants use, the travel that they have, the photocopying paper, is what you call the operating expenditure, everyday expenditure. You spend that every year, you've got nothing necessary to show for it. In 2004, out of the total amount of money government spent, 83% went into operating expenditure. In other words, the everyday expenses. Only 17% went into building things. Roads, bridges, jetties, hospitals, whatever it was. Today, out of all the money we spend, 60%, as opposed to 83, goes into operating, but 40% goes into capital expenditure. 40% is very, very high. So that's what we are focused on, because we want to ensure that we spend more money to build things. So if we do ever borrow, and we do borrow, we've got something to show for it. So if you want to ask me any question on that, please ask me. Funding for roads, bridges and jetties. In 2004, only $55 million was spent. A lot of the things that we are doing in your town should have been done 20 years ago. Should have been 25 years ago. Today we spend $527 billion on roads, bridges, jetties, street lights, whatever the case may be. That's the level of change. That's how we are running government. That's how budget allocations have been made. Next one, please. So I think there are some students who arrived after we started. Welcome. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. Water and energy. Again, 2004, $92 million was spent in water and energy. Now we spend $337 million in water and energy. A lot of people now who never used to have water, now have access to water. A lot of people do not have access to electricity, now have access to electricity. Before, if you were living in a rural area and you wanted FEA to bring the power line to you, everybody in that area had to contribute 10%. Sometimes you had like 20 homes in the area, maybe 10 homes gave their contribution, the other 10 did not give, the electricity was not connected. And in fact, government had that money. We've returned all that money now. In fact, we made a decision about 2 years ago, we returned everybody's money and we said we'll do it for you at our own expense. The reason why we believe electricity connection is very important, because obviously if you're studying, your children are studying, students are studying, it's better for them to have lights to study under. If you live near, your village, you catch fish, it's better to have a fridge. So when you catch the fish, you're not forced to have to sell the fish on that day. Some people, they stand by the side of the road to sell the fish because they know that if they don't sell the fish, they either have to eat it all by themselves or the fish will go bad. There's no refrigeration. A lot of these kind of things that we take for granted. But if you have a fridge, they can chill it and they can keep it, and the next day they can sell it. These things actually help people. Water and energy. Next one. This is what we. Sorry. Yes, I've talked about that. Funding for education. You can see again, 2004, $270 million. Now, $598 million. So even like a school like this, which is a community-based school, or there are certain schools that are faith-based schools that may be run by a particular church or a faith-based organization, or schools that are run by committees, even though they have management control of it, we pay for the salaries of all the teachers. We pay for the other educational support also. It's the government's responsibility to do that. We pay for all the school fees also. And when schools are damaged, we also pay for that also. So that's where the money is going into. And also, of course, the TELS. As I talked about, we have a topper scholarship. Once you finish year 13, if you want to go to university, which we encourage you to go to, or at least go to a technical college. When you want to go to university, if you apply for a scholarship, if you don't get the scholarship, but you get a place in university, you can get tertiary education loan if you cannot pay for it. So we'll pay for university fees. And you pay the government back after you have got a job and start working. They take off little bits, like repayments, slowly every month. And the interest rate is 0 if you come from low income family. If you come from a high income family, the interest rate is only 1.5%. So today we have something like 16,000 students who have been assisted or are being assisted through the toppers and the tertiary education loan scheme. Before, when we had all the scholarships or other forms, we had only about 6,000 or 7,000 students that were assisted. Today something like 16,000 students that are being assisted. And that's where a lot of the money is also going into. Next one, please. Funding for health, again, funding, as you can see, has increased significantly, 132 million in 2004, now it's $244 million. We have a huge shortage of health professionals in Fiji, ladies and gentlemen. Huge shortage. As you know, you may have seen last year, we increased the salaries of doctors who work for government by up to about 80%. Because the salaries weren't good, they weren't competitive enough. A lot of our good doctors were also going overseas because they're getting paid better. A lot of them said, look, we don't mind staying back as long as, for example, if were paid reasonably better. So we've done that. But also we need to build a good cadre, a good crop of local doctors. At the moment, what we also decided in last year's budget, if anybody that works for government public health system is a doctor, if you want to do further studies after you want to specialize in certain areas, and you go to FNU at night classes, we pay for that for free. You join as a doctor, you want to start doing special classes, we pay for it, it's free, because we want you to become specialists. It's very, very important for people to specialize. At the moment in Fiji, as I've said on the weekend, if anybody over here has a heart attack, there's nobody in Fiji, there's no Fijian doctor that can cut you open and do open heart surgery. Nobody. It's a tragedy in 21st century that we don't have that. And the reason why we don't have that, unfortunately, is that previously nobody saw it fit to invest in our people. Just because you have an MBBS doesn't mean they can come and cut me open and play with my heart. You have to specialize. It takes about 10-15 years for somebody to become a cardiac surgeon. But how will we get people specialized if they are not being given the assistance, not being given the training, not being given the exposure, not being given the right levels of salary? So we're encouraging people to do that, and we hope some of you will also be able to join in that profession. The next slide, please. Again, this shows that how much money we are saving. This is the government operating savings. In other words, remember I showed you that slide, how much money we are making, the revenue. If you take that revenue and subtract it from the everyday expenses that we have, which is your operating revenue, the blue line, that's how much money we make. The brown section is how much money we spend on everyday expenses. And the green shows the savings that we have from operating expenditure. In other words, we are only borrowing money to build things. We don't borrow money to pay for operating expenditure. So you can see the operating savings is increasing. Next slide, please. Government debt. Again, you can see debt is a debt to GDP ratio is actually decreasing, but it increased this year because of Cyclone Winston. So let me explain this to you. This is the bar, is what you call a nominal amount. This is a debt to GDP ratio. Now, let me give you an example. If, for example, all of us as a country, sorry, not all of us, but as a country, we make, say, $100. If you all make $100, and then we go off and borrow $20, right? $20. So that's 20% of $100. 20 over 100 is 20%. So you say your debt to GDP ratio is 20%. If 20 over 100 is 20%. Then, if, for example, we go and borrow $50, but our total revenue is, say, $500. Well, in the first scenario, our total revenue is $100, but we borrow $20, just 20%. But assuming our total revenue is $500, and we borrow $50, it's only 10%. 50 over 500 is 10%. So if somebody looking and says, hey, you are borrowing more money. You used to borrow $20, but now you're borrowing $50. I said, yes, but look at how much money we are making now. You get my drift? So debt to GDP ratio, the percentage is what you must look at. This is very important. So we have a target to decrease this line, keep on going down further. But it slightly went up. Remember, as I told you, you spent $208 million after the cyclone. So it went up slightly more. This is really not the figure to look at. This is what we call the nominal figure. This is the more important line to look at, debt to GDP ratio. There are some countries that borrow, hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. But the debt to GDP ratio may be actually, only 20%. So they're borrowing a lot more than we are in actual number terms, but as a percentage of the GDP is much lower because they are much wealthier than us. Okay, next. So essentially, this is the last slide. Talking about the economy, like I said, has grown for the 8th consecutive year. We have very good, favorable growth prospects for the medium term, so you have a bright future ahead of you. Of course, we can always improve things. We have increased private sector investment optimism. A lot of private companies are very optimistic. A lot of them are investing. A lot of new buildings you'll see are being built, not just in Navua, but if you go to other places too. We have got much more money we're spending in building things in terms of infrastructure. As I talked to you about the economy being broad-based, we're having a lot more things contribute to the economic growth. The foreign reserves, as I mentioned, is very comfortable, and we expect inflation to decrease even further, given the fact that we are over the cyclone. Of course, God forbid we have another cyclone. That's another story altogether, which of course we don't want. But one of the things that we are doing now, I don't know how many of you have been to Nandi recently. If you look at coming out of Nandi Airport, we built a 4-lane highway, 2 lanes each way, going all the way up to Namaka, to Matintar. But if you look at that, on the side of the road, there is no electricity cables overhead. There's no other cables, no TFL cables overhead. We put everything under the ground. And all those cables and water pipes, even the water authority pipes, are on the side of the road, not underneath the road. In Fiji before, when they used to build roads and take water, they put the water pipe underneath the road. So when there's a water leak, you have to dig up the road. The road gets damaged. The pipe, if the pipe is a small leak, you won't even know. So over the years, the pipe is leaking slowly and the ground is getting softer. So when the big trucks come, it creates potholes. You see some roads, they get lifted up on the side. That's the result of the earth being very soft underneath the ground. In one place we discovered where the highway was built, and it was built many years ago underneath a spring. They were too lazy to go somewhere else, you might as well build the road on top of the spring. So of course when the cyclone comes along and the spring is gushing water out, you have a huge slide, the road cannot be used anymore. So when we are building now, we're actually building for the future. Why did we put the electricity cables on the side of the road or make it go underground? And the water pipes, we relocated it, took it out, put it on the side of the road. If there's a water leakage, we don't have to dig up the road. These things cost money. To do simply the electrical cables underground costs us $20 million more. But it's good in a way because if we have a cyclone and we have the power lines overhead, it goes down. You have to rebuild it. Another cyclone comes, it goes down. You have to rebuild it. Another cyclone comes, it goes down. You have to build it. So at the end of the day, we are actually saving money. When we had Cyclone Winston, 6,000 kilometers of electrical lines went down in Fiji. 6,000 kilometers. So you can imagine if we had all of those electrical cables underground, no problem, everybody would have still had electricity. It would not take so long to rebuild it. But those things actually cost a lot more money upfront. It's like you're building a house. You can do a half-pie job. Build a house, just put the roof. If you don't strap it well, don't do it well, it can get damaged very quickly. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's the end of the presentation. Please feel free to ask any questions. If you have any queries, any suggestions, whatever it is, please feel free to do so. And we take it on board. Don't feel shy, don't feel mandua, whatever it is, to ask any questions. We'll open up the floor. Somebody will bring a mic to you. Just put your hand up. If you have any ideas, please let us know too. Thank you.